Hello guys, once again it's Matt, and today we have another video. Let's thank our members as always. Thank you Overlanding 11B for being the full crew member, and thank you all the Fishman members as well. Thank you Igor, Yuyush, Justin Field, Yaf, Chalares, and Trastopub and Silami, and let's get into it. So today we're going to dive down on the history, on the performance, on everything that we normally do on the Diving Down series on the Mirage 2000C basically, but the Mirage 2000. Since it is coming, it's confirmed, we saw on the dev server, we just flew it out a little bit, and yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about it. A very cool aircraft, one of the first proper 4th gen aircraft of the game, together with the F-14. That's debatable. Always remember the 4th gen, 3rd gen, stuff like that. It's not official, okay? So don't fight over it. I see a lot of people fighting of generations because the Vegan is a 4th generation aircraft or a 3rd generation. No, because the Mirage 2000 is a 4th generation, but whatever, man. These things are not official, okay? It's not like a government thing or a military thing, even though they are used by pilots in the military and stuff like that. But these are just ways so that we can kind of compare aircraft and stuff like that. So it's not a concrete thing, okay? Generation of aircraft are a fluid thing that it doesn't comply with every aircraft ever built. For example, a MiG-25 it's from 1967, and it is way better than any third generation of that time, but it is not as comparable to MiG-29. So it's not a third, but it's not a 4th generation also. So what it is, a 3.5 generation? Yeah, well, this is the thing, this is the point. The vegan is also another thing. It's worse than a lot of 4th generations, but it is better than some, and then it's better than 4th generations and worse than some as well. So it depends, you know. So this is not the point of having these arguments, okay? So it is technically, the Mirage is a 4th generation aircraft, but just remember that it's a fluid thing and it doesn't say much about anything, okay? Each aircraft is its own aircraft, okay? So yeah, but first of all, let's talk about its performance and history. We're going to talk about the variants, and after that, the variants that can come, and that is coming to War Thunder in this patch. Okay, so the performance and the history of the aircraft, we are going to start talking with that. So, it is a French multi-role aircraft, single-engined, technically a 4th generation aircraft built by Dassault Aviation in France to replace the Mirage 3, the Mirage F1. Many nations use the aircraft, and even in some wars, so it's combat proven, especially in ground attack, with many variants, over 600 built of them. So it is a very well known aircraft. A lot of countries, including my country, Brazil, use it for a while. So it is very cool, and I really hope we see a scheme for Brazil, because we use just that because Brazil rules, okay? But yeah. It started out in 1965, basically, kind of, not the project itself, but the idea behind it, because the French left the Tornado program due to costs and stuff like that, and they ended up developing the Mirage G, which was it led to the G8 to replace the Mirage 3. But and yeah, it was a swing wing aircraft, big and stuff like that, a super Mirage basically. So yeah, the idea was behind that, but eventually they ended up not liking the idea very much. But at the same time, they started developing the Delta 1000 program in 1972. So they had as the Mirage G8, I think, and the G8A, which is a fixed version of the G8 wing version of the G8. But because of the way that the normal G8 and the G8A normally worked, it basically did not align with the service conception of an aircraft that they actually wanted. They wanted a cheaper aircraft, which these aircraft were not cheap, and a lighter aircraft, more similar to what the Mirage 3 was. So yeah, initially they wanted a Mach 3 aircraft, but not an interdictor aircraft, an aircraft that cannot turn basically, as the G8 was. So yeah, an incapable to dogfight aircraft would be a problem to the French, So which is funny because for the UK especially it was not, and they really heavily they they heavily were dependent on the Tornado ADV in the 80s and the Harrier, which is kind of a limited air force if you ask me, but pretty cool. Anyway, they are very different designs and pretty interesting. But back to the G8, the G8A with two engines was basically 2 times more expensive than the Mirage F1, and with the F16 being bought by many European countries. In 1975, this Super Mirage kind of thing, the G8, was cancelled. So it was too expensive and nobody was actually showing interest in it. Some people started buying the F16, so they decided to cancel the program altogether. Then, with the Delta 2000 program, they had this idea already, obviously before that, and they decided to pursue it of a lighter, cheaper aircraft. And basically, they made the design and projects and stuff like that. We're not gonna get into much, but still. And basically, in 1976, they decided initially in 75 to build three prototypes. In 76, they decided to place an order of 200 aircraft in at first. In 1982 is the first one to be delivered officially, having its first flight in 1978. So it is a 1970s design introduced into the 80s. Very similar to the MiG-29, kind of similar to the MiG-15, the F-15 a bit. The F-16, they were late 70s as well, entering production and stuff like that. So yeah. Um, 83 and 84 is kind of the date for the official introduction, even though in 1982 the first ones were delivered. And yeah, basically use the Thomson CSF radar, Doppler multifunction, RDI I think it's called, and powered by the SNECMA N53-5-5 that we're going to talk a little bit about it later, this engine. So yeah, and the radar was kind of limited initially, okay? So it's not the version that we are going to get in the War Thunder. I'm going to talk about it later, but initially it had only like 37 kilometers of range looking down, and it was very limited radar. This version entering in 1984, 1983. Until 1986, he only used the Magic 1 as well. And they used the Super 530F initially, and after that the Super 530D. So it had many upgrades during its time. Even the engine was upgraded after a while. It has a fly-by-wire system. I think it's the first aircraft in the game that has a proper fly-by-wire system, which is pretty cool, to be honest. I think the way that it's feeling on the server, it feels like it doesn't have anything different from it. You can feel that around below 800 kilometers per hour you can turn a lot more, but that's just because the slats start to open more and stuff like that. So yeah, at below 500 it can turn very well, which is kind of funny that's so low like that. But yeah, it can pull some intense AOAs, and as you saw on yesterday's video on the Mirage dogfights, it can hold its ground against the top tiers of War Thunder right now. It depends very much on the pilot. I'm not the greatest pilot ever in a Mirage, but still, it's pretty good. In real life, he had INS as well, which is a very good navigation system, inertial navigation system. Initially having 285, not initially actually, around all of its time, it had around 285 meters per second of climb. With around 1,110 kilometers per hour of safety limit at sea level in War Thunder, and in real life it could get to 1,370, 1,400 depending on the condition, but beyond that is dangerous for wing breakage. Okay, the max speed was Mach 2.2, so it was not that fast, but it is fast. In War Thunder I could manage to put Mach 2.0 very easily, but it took a while, but still it is fast, especially with missiles and stuff. It has modern HUD. Obviously, we didn't see that in War Thunder yet, but still. As I said before, the engine was the M53 built by Snecma, and it was a turbofan, which means it's very, very efficient. We are going to talk a little bit about it later, but we had two versions, and in the files we have two versions as well of the engine, which is kind of interesting. So initially it was the M53-5, which is a very weak engine, to be honest, 88 kilonewtons, but very, very efficient. And in game right now we have the P2 variant, which has 95 kilonewtons, which was used after 1987. So yeah, in War Thunder, as I'm going to say on the variants, we have the S5 variant. That S5 variant has a better radar and a better engine than this initial variant, okay? So yeah, the cannons were two DEFA 554, so I think it's the first aircraft that actually uses it, but it's just a modernization of the normal DEFA 552s, 553s that we already had in game. It's a 30mm revolver cannon, very similar to the Aiden, very similar to various types of revolver cannons, 125 rounds each initially. I think it was changed later, but it is around there as well. Initially, as I said before, I used the MatAWG 1 until 1986. After that, used the MatAWG 2 as the IR, all aspect missiles. And it had IRCCM, which is the infrared countermeasure. It's a system that makes it so that at least this first generation of IRCCMs, they normally try to limit the FOV after it got a lock, so that way the missile will not look at flares. So yeah, it's a very effective system, and depending on the distance of the target, especially below 2 kilometers, 3 kilometers, it will be very, very hard to decoy these missiles with just flares. You have to turn and do a lot of things. So yeah, there is that. Of course, the Russians also had a missile like that in 1982 called the R-73, 1982 and 83, 84. Also, the Americans had the AIM-9M, which also had IRCCM, so we probably will start seeing this type of systems in the game not long after these. Of course, the MatAWG 2 doesn't have that yet, but still. And the missile was the Super 530D, made basically it's the same missile as the 530F, but better, so it had a better seeker, better Gs, stuff like that. In game, it's basically the same right now in a file, so we will have to wait until we see the performance. But the range is a little bit, it's better. It had probably an inverted monopole seeker. I couldn't confirm it, but it is very, very capable. And yeah, pretty good. The range was about 40 kilometers, so yeah. Very maneuverable missile, and with the RDM radar that we have in the 1987 version, the S5, it should be very, very good. As I said, it had two radars. Initially, it has the RDI radar, which has only 37 kilometers in look down, but with the RDM, it was bumped up to 93 kilometers. So yeah, pretty amazing. The RDM is supposed to be a very good radar. Probably has TWS, I think it has, right? So yeah, it's not implemented yet in game, so I cannot confirm, but still, it could carry many types of bombs, guided bombs, rockets, stuff like that, missiles, stuff like that. So, but we are going to talk about it later, depending on the variant in the future. But still, in game, it can carry some dumb bombs, some dumb rockets. It was found to have in the files the GBU 12. But I don't know, I don't think we are going to get it because the Mirage 2000C could not designate its own targets, okay? So you will need buddy lasing, and in War Thunder we normally don't have that type of thing, so yeah. But still, very effective air to ground and air to air. So this is the history, the performance, the general performance of the aircraft. Pretty good, light, cheap, very effective, and yeah. The variants, there are many, many variants, but to be honest, there are not that many as the Su-27 or the F-16, for example. So yeah, we have initially the Mirage 2000C, but with the C we have two sub-variants. So we have the S3 and the S5. The S3 we won't be getting in the game apparently, even though we have some stuff for the M53-5 engine, which is kind of funny, which is the engine that it used with 88 kilonewtons. but still it's kind of weird. So this version, the S3, is before 1987, uses the RDI radar, which is the limited radar that I said before, with 37 kilometers. Used MatAWG once until 86, and used initially the Super 530F. I had the Super 530D to fire. Bombs, rockets, cluster bombs, GPUs, as I said, with friend designation and stuff like that. After 1986, it received the MatAWG 2, but after 1987, we came to the Mirage 2000 CS5, which is the version that we are going to get it. So it's the late 80s version. Had the RDM radar, which is a very good radar, 93 kilometers in look down, and with a better engine with 95 to 97 kilonewtons static. So yeah, basically the version that we have right now. So in game we had 97. I could not test it yet, but in optimal conditions it probably has way more power than that, more than 100, 120, 30 maybe kilonewtons. So yeah, still very powerful, but it has some problems with thrust weight still. Even though it's a very good aircraft in turning, and as I tested out in the dev server, it can hold its ground basically against any aircraft in the dogfight. It could not test, obviously, the BVR because the radar is not ready and it's modeled as a Mirage 3 radar still. But still, and the missiles are not ready yet. So yeah, I'm going to test it out once it's updated, okay? After that, we have the Mirage 2000B, which is this two-seater trainer version of the C. It is, I think it's combat capable, but it is basically a conversion trainer, so nothing much to talk about there. Then we have the Mirage 2000M, which is a two-seat also, but for nuclear strike version of this B, basically, that uses the ASMP nuclear missile. It has MatAWG's Mika missiles, 60, which are 60 kilometers Fox 3 missiles, so this is far away from now, late 90s kind of thing. It could use the Super 530 still, so yeah, kind of, it's good for that, but still. And another thing is that it could carry its own guidance systems for guided bombs and stuff like that. So it could use a flare pod or something like that that could actually designate the target for itself, okay? The back seat is not a trainer now, it's an actual weapons officer, a weasel, so yeah, pretty cool. Then we have the Mirage 2000D, which is the same aircraft as the N, but as a conventional striker, okay? So it's a two-seater, but it doesn't have the ability to carry the nuclear missiles. Can carry the 530s, the MatAWGs, the Mikas in the future, you know. It could designate its targets with the laser and drop guided bombs, maybe even the AS-30L, so I could not confirm that, but probably, right? Even though I don't know, but still, at least the guided bombs used. Okay, so it's pretty interesting. Just a normal strike version, two-seater. Okay, after that we had the RMV upgrade to the D, which basically I think it was the upgrade to that made it uses the Mika and stuff like that. So it is just a midlife upgrade for the 2000D. So we will see the 2000D from earlier than that, and then the 2000D RMV with the RMV upgrade, which guides. It turns to have more avionics, better weapons, more capabilities in general. Okay. Then they had to do an upgrade for the Mirage 2000C as well. So that's the Mirage 2005F, which is a very modern one, late 90s, okay? Upgrade to the C. It has LSD avionics, targeting pods, RDY radar instead of the RDM, which is an even better radar. Mika missiles with 6 targets each time if they want to. Laser designators for ground, NVD, better HUD, a lot more. So it's just a more modernized Mirage 2000 single seat, okay? And then even the 5F received an upgrade. So there is the Mirage 2000 5F Mark II, which is even more upgraded with data link for the Mika EM, a flare pod, better radar, better GPS together with the INS systems. So just the final version of the Mirage 2000 for the French, you know. So these are the French versions. and the French used every single one of them, and we can see a lot of them. I'm going to talk about it later in the video, but these are pretty cool. A lot of countries use these versions as well. For example, Brazil, as I said before, used the Mirage 2000C S5, but still it was a French built for the French, and it was bought in second hand, I think. So yeah, but then after that we have the export variants. So we have basically the package 2000E. So we have basically the Mirage 2000E. There's no actual Mirage in 2000E, but it is just called that for selling. Basically, it has a better RDM radar, and basically RDM plus radar, Atlas pods, and some other modifications to the Mirage 2000D and the Mirage 2005F for exports. Okay, instead of using the RDY radar, for example, and stuff like that. And this is a very good example. It's like the Su-30, for example, in the Russians, and or the F-15s E advanced with the Americans. Depending on the client that bought the aircraft, it had some specific things. And that could change the name. So basically, it depends on the variant, it depends on the client. It will have a different name, basically. So we have the normal E, which is just a commercial name for selling. And then we have the 2000 EM, which is the Egypt version of the E. So yeah, pretty cool. And then they have also the BM, which is a trainer, two-seater, you know. Then the 2000H and TH, which are the single seat and the B-placed versions for India. That uses the R-73 missile, the Russian one, and obviously the TH is the two-seaters and the H is the single seat. Another Indian version is the 2000I and the TI, which are an Indian spec of the 2005F Mark II with some other avionics, like for example Israeli ones, French ones, and even Indian and domestically built. Okay. Then we have the Mirage 2000P, which is a Peru one, you know, E for Peru, and then the DP as a trainer for Peru or ground striker. Then China. China is a very interesting country because we have China in game, and we might see this Mirage in the future. So they have two variants. They have the EI and the DI, being the EI a single seat and the DI as a trainer, and basically a trainer. But it's from Taiwan, obviously, and they are based on the Mirage 2005F, but without any air-to-ground weaponry. You know, it has the in-flight refueling system and stuff like that, but it doesn't have air-to-ground, so it's just an interceptor. That's the only variant that Taiwan used, and it's a variant that we're going to get it in the far future because it's based on the Mirage 5F, 2005F, so it's too advanced for the 2000C that we have right now. Okay. So probably in the far future. I see China receiving an F-16 much earlier than this because the F-16 that they got is much more simple than this aircraft. Then we have the Mirage 2000 EDA and DDA being the Qatari ones, I think it's called. The EDA being the single seat and the DDA being the twin seat. Then we have the EAD and the RAD, which are single seat versions. For the UAE, the United Arab Emirates. So the EAD is a single seat fighter, and the RAD is a reconnaissance version with different pods and stuff like that for reconnaissance. Okay, I think it's single seat as well. The EG and the BG are the Greek ones, with the EG being the single seat and the BG being the trainer, two seats. RDM radar anti-ship redesignated as the EGM right now, with probably some modernizations. And the last two variants, we have the 2009-9, Mirage 2000-9, which is an export variant of the 2005F Mark II for the United Arab Emirates. And together with the 2000BR, which is a -9 variant for Brazil that never materialized. We eventually move on and bought Gripens. So yeah, it's not from the same program, but still pretty interesting. So these are the variants, not that many to be honest. A lot of the French ones. So just recapping, we have the normal Cs with two subvariants, early than 1986, is the 87, and later than that. We are going to get the S5, which is the 87 variant. We have the B, which is the two-seater, N, which is the two-seater nuclear strike version, D, which is the normal ground attack version with the RMV upgrade, then the Mirage 2005F being upgraded to the C, 5F Mark II with even more upgrades, and then we have the E's, which are the export variants. Okay, so these are all the variants that we see, and now we're going to talk about the variants that can come to War Thunder. So to finish the video basically. So for France first, obviously we are getting the Mirage 2000C RDM, which is basically the S5, which uses the RDM radar, 93 kilometers range looking down, pretty good range, very similar to a Mirage, to a MiG-29, to F-15, so pretty good. It has the Super 530s at its main missiles, the D variant, and the Magic Juice as the main IR missiles under the Mirage F1C. It's already on the dev server and it's already coming, so there's not much to talk about it there, okay? After that, I think in a while, not long after, to be honest, probably in the next patch or even something like that, when we get tornadoes and Su-24s and stuff like that, we can get the Mirage 2000D under the F1 CT, which is basically the same type of mission that the CT was made of for, you know. So, for example, you would use the Super 530 still, the Magic, so it would be very similar to the F1 CT in the sense that it's similar to the F1C. But it also uses a flare pod so that it can actually guide its missiles and stuff like that. It can even be upgraded in the future with a higher BR to carry the Mikas and stuff like that, or receive the another version as an RMV version so that it can carry the Mikas and stuff like that. But this in the far future, okay? Then we have the final version of the Mirage 2000. For the French, the 2005F Mark II, I think it should come after the 2000C and before something like a Rafale coming up, you know? So these would be 90s technology, very good radar, Fox 3 missiles. This is way in the future, but this is the last Mirage 2 that we will see. So not many of them, as you see, we can basically talk about the French only having these 3 aircraft probably coming in the future, okay, for top tier, while the Americans and the Russians probably are getting like 5, 10 aircraft depending on the situation. So, and that's because Gaijin doesn't like French aircraft? No, it's not because of that. It's because the French could not in any situation produce as many models as bigger countries, okay? People have to get that in the mind, you know, that a small country like France have a limited have limited resources to build an aircraft compared to a country like like the Soviet Union or the US, you know, which has way more money and way more facilities and way more factories and stuff like that to actually produce aircraft. So they will have less aircraft. This is for any small country. That's why I always say that if you don't know what country you should grind in War Thunder, go for the US or the USSR. They will always be the aircraft, the countries that have the most advanced aircraft normally, or at least they have many aircraft, so that you can. They always will have a competitive aircraft, is what I mean. Yeah, basically that's it. And then for China, obviously we only have technically 2 variants, but I don't see the B-placed version coming up. Once we get the 2005F Mark II for the French, we should get the 2000EI for the Taiwanese. So without any air-to-ground, and initially with the Super 530s, and after that the Mikas. And yeah, after something like an F-16A Block 25 or something like that, you know, which is a more basic aircraft compared to this 2000, the F-16. And yeah, it's a very interesting aircraft and very cool. And I think we will see it in the future, but not right now for China and not these other versions for France. For now, we're probably going to get these. I can see the D variant coming up very soon, but beyond that, it's just probably not coming very soon, okay? So basically this is it. I hope you enjoyed, and a bit of the history, a bit of the performance, the variants of the aircraft that you can expect. a little bit on everything on the Mirage 2000. If you have any doubts, leave it in the comments. Let me know what you think, and if you have corrections, leave it in the comments as well. It's hard to find information that it's historical accurate, you know, in this type of aircraft and stuff like that. So military history is complicated sometimes. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and I see you guys on the next one, probably tomorrow. So bye guys, see ya.